towns where men settle their differences with guns. Then there are towns where men settle their differences with whiskey. Hello, and welcome to the Tainted Tavern.
Coming to the Tainted Tavern, come sit a while for free. We talk about our musings and devices we've been using.
Hello, today we've got a showdown. We are putting two bourbons up against each other. We are putting the legend, that is Buffalo Trace, which is a very well respected bourbon whiskey and something that I drink quite regularly. As you can see, a big percentage of the bottle has gone there. And we are putting it up against a pretender, a newcomer, a Lidl whiskey. A whiskey sold by the budget supermarket Lidl's under the name Western Gold. And we are going to be putting these two whiskies up against each other. And before I do that, I just want to say that on this channel lately I've reviewed a lot of supermarket branded whiskies. And the way this works is that the supermarkets will purchase the whiskies from a recognized distiller, and then they'll bottle it under their own name. And they don't generally give away which distiller the whiskey comes from. Now, most of the supermarket-owned branded whiskies that I've drunk lately, I very much enjoyed, with one exception. There's a whiskey from Asda. It was McKendrick's that came from Asda. That was the one whiskey out excuse me, out of the supermarket-owned blends that I haven't really enjoyed. It'd be okay as a mixer, I suppose, and it may appeal to someone else's palate, so I don't want to knock it because taste is very subjective. But one of the whiskies that I was very, very impressed with for a supermarket-owned branded whiskey was Lidl's Ben Brachen whiskey. Now, they do three different expressions of Ben Brachen, that is Lidl whiskies. You've got the Isla, you've got the Highland, and you've got the Speyside. Now, I enjoyed all three. The Speyside was very impressive, but by far my favourite of the Lidl's own branded Ben Brachen whiskies was the Island expression. I've got an unopened bottle here. I've bought several bottles of this now, Ben Brachen Isla, but that's more tuned to my own taste because I do like peated whiskies. But all these version of their peated whiskies, which was the Glenmarnock Isla, was pretty decent as well, but I think that the Ben Brachen had the edge. So today we are putting a bottle of Buffalo Trace up against a bottle of Western Gold. Now, Western Gold is Lidl's own brand, so we don't know where this comes from. We don't know what distillery supplies it. All we do know is that this was distilled and matured in good old Kentucky, which is the same place that Buffalo Trace comes from. Buffalo Trace is a straight Kentucky bourbon, which means it must be aged at a minimum of 2 years, but Western Gold is simply a bourbon, a Kentucky bourbon rather than a Kentucky straight, so there's no requirement on any any aging of this whiskey. However, neither bottle carries an age statement, so by law, any bourbon that is less than 4 years old, whether it's a straight Kentucky bourbon or just a Kentucky bourbon, or any bourbon actually from anywhere in the USA, it doesn't have to be made in Kentucky, though if it carries the name Kentucky, it does obviously have to hail from Kentucky. Good old Kentucky, yeah, the Southern boys, let's rock and roll. But they have to carry an age statement if they're less than 4 years old, so we can confidently surmise that both whiskies in each of these bottles are 4 years old. Now, when they are poured into the glass, they're very similar in colour. In fact, holding them up to the light, I would say they are identical. This is the Western Gold here, and this is the Buffalo Trace. I would say they are almost identical. Now, for this smackdown, for this fight, for this big bout between the Buffalo Trace, the well-respected bourbon brand, and the pretender, the Western Gold, we're going to take everything into account. So first of all, the bottle design. Now, undoubtedly in bottle design, Buffalo Trace wins hands down. It's a lovely bottle, a lovely rounded bottle. It's got a traditional cork seal there, and it's got some lovely information on the back here. The ancient paths of countless buffalo led America wayward. Legendary explorers, pioneers, and settlers alike followed these trails, known as traces, through rugged wilderness to new lands, new adventures, and newfound freedom. One such trace, called the Great Buffalo Trace, crossed the Kentucky River at a spot just north of present-day Frankfurt. Where this stuff is made, there's a lot more on there, but we won't go into it all because this video will take too long. Whereas, by comparison, Western Gold, the legend on the back of Western Gold simply tells us Lidl Great Britain Limited, Little House, 14 Kingston Road, Surbiton, KT5, 9NU, bottled by Probert and Richard, Basket, Gabriel Squiddle, 41, in fucking Germany. Nothing to do with America, it's bottled in Germany. However, it must have travelled from the United States. This was distilled and aged in good old Kentucky, the same place as Buffalo Trace. In fact, this may even contain some Buffalo Trace. We don't know. Lidl don't give away the source of their whiskey. So, let's take the Buffalo Trace to the nose, the champion, the undisputed master of mid-priced whiskies. And in the UK, the price on these things, for Buffalo Trace, you could probably, the price you paid for Buffalo Trace, you could get a decent meal. At least you could get an 8-ounce steak and frozen chips, pretending to be real chips in an Angry Horse. Whereas for Western Gold, for the price you pay for that, you'd be hard pushed to get a decent sandwich. There's a massive difference in price, and that comes in to the review. So let's take the Buffalo Trace to the nose. Caramel. That clean, refreshing odour which comes from the corn. Of course, the mash bill of both of these whiskies must be 51% corn. So, even though they are poles apart in terms of what they are, this is a high quality bourbon, known and respected throughout the world, and this is a cheap supermarket branded bourbon, but they've still got a very similar mash bill. Both must contain 51% corn. The Buffalo Trace to the nose, you're getting that caramel, a sweetness like a molasses. It's very smooth on the nose. The Western Gold, by comparison, a lot less on the nose. In comparison to that, it's like trying to nose water. But there is that caramelly, bourbony, but it's a lot more subdued to the palate. And these are very small measures because it's early in the day. Hey, I run a YouTube channel, I'm allowed to drink bourbon early in the day. The Buffalo Trace almost tastes, there's a sweet that is very, or used to be very popular over in the UK when I was growing up. I believe you can still get them. And they're little tiny candy, as you Americans call them, or we British call them, sweeties. And those sweets were Parma violets, little purpley sweets in a little tube. This reminds me, the taste of Buffalo Trace reminds me a lot of Parma violets. Okay, let's go with the Western Gold. On the nose, as I say, it's a lot less, it's much more subdued than the Buffalo Trace, but on the palate, that's where it counts. Okay, that's not unpleasant. It's got that caramel, identity. Do you know, I would say confidently, guessing, no evidence for this, but I would say that Western Gold is very likely Jim Beam. That's what it reminds me of. It's like a Jim Beam type whiskey. I'm just guessing at that, but in terms of aroma, in terms of taste, it seems like a Jim Beam. Jim Beam, basic Jim Beam, that is. And that's very credible because it's the way that these supermarket brands work. They purchase whiskey in bulk from a big distiller, and then they can sell it at a vastly knocked down price. They label it up as their own product, such as this Western Gold here, with its Lidl product. They just got someone sitting in the acquisitions office trying to think, hey, what should we call our whiskey? What should we call our whiskey? So they come up with Western Gold. It's a very American type emphasis on the label. We've got Kentucky Bourbon whiskey here. We've got a couple of barrels here. And here we've got the bald eagle, which is, of course, it's a symbol of the United States of America. This is not unpleasant. Does it hold up to Buffalo Trace? Well, to be honest, in terms of both flavor and nose, then no, Buffalo Trace kicks it out of the water. But it's still a decent whiskey, and you've got to take the price point into comparison. And when you take that price point into comparison, Western Gold is less than half price of Buffalo Trace. So what is offering you the best bang for your buck, the best value for your money? That's something you have to decide yourself. But what I will say is that this Western Gold is hardly a letdown. It's a drinkable bourbon whiskey, and for the price, then if I had if the results of this showdown was purely on price, then Western Gold would knock Buffalo Trace out of the park. Western Gold would kick Buffalo Trace. It would be a knockout. KO! KO! The Buffalo Trace is down. That's in terms of price. But in terms of flavor, in terms of nuance, in terms of complexity, then it's Buffalo Trace all the way, and Western Gold is down for a count. So, what are my conclusions from this battle between Lidl's Western Gold and the Buffalo Trace? Well, both are good whiskies. Good in the sense that they both provide an enjoyable tipple, an enjoyable drink, an enjoyable whiskey experience. The Buffalo Trace, it's bloody lovely. The Western Gold, it may not be as bloody lovely as Buffalo Trace, but it's still bloody lovely enough for me. But you know what trumps them both? This haunted bookshop tobacco, very, very good. And so then,